makes South Africa a valued nation brand?
Loretta, thank you very much for having us in. And on this Africa Day, we're very pleased that we're able to receive such recognition. You know, it's important for us. Obviously, the conveners of the award have a basis which has now moved from just being, you know, how sexy is this brand, and you know, how well known is it, and how much is it on people's lips, etc., to now putting some sort of value to it. And essentially, if one relates it, clearly there's a very technical approach to it. It's backed up by an ISO standard, believe it or not, which defines the criteria by which the valuation takes place. It is dependent on data as well, which means that it's not only on surveys and what you receive from JOSO. And it's based on size of GDP, backed up by its governance structures, the various policy legislative reforms, as well as the people factor. Yes, they do go out there and you know, ask the questions of a target audience around how, you know, be it a wide spectrum of stakeholders, from those that do business or seek to invest in a country, the ease of business factor, all of those sort of issues are indicators that then goes towards placing a value. And just to say, to what end? Why would you want to put a value to a brand? It's pretty much like you and I running a business. And we say, well, we've put 10 years into this business. Yes, you can come and count the stock on the shelf, but I've developed a brand, I've developed a name, I've developed a reputation, and there's a goodwill attached to it, but it tends to be very nebulous.
Okay, so basically the valuation of South Africa as a brand stands somewhere in the region of $150 billion, and you've explained how it's quantified. They also give a rating, an A-. Now, if a credit ratings agency was to rate a country, they'd be looking at sovereign debt issues, fiscal management of the economy, growth and output, those kinds of issues. In this instance, what does the rating mean?
Well, they look at a number of factors, amongst which is the issue of productivity. There's customer satisfaction, which is an indicator as well. And in line with that is the infrastructure as well that supports, you know, the destination or the brand, the country brand, and these elements are then given a rating. And clearly, once we get the data that supports that in terms of the findings of each one of these, what it tells us as Brand South Africa is, where should we sharpen our pencil? Where do we need to up our game?
Where should we sharpen our pencil? Because some people listening to this conversation right now would say, oh, but South Africa's got the benefit of having hosted the World Cup last year, visibility, brand equity, consciousness, and of course the infrastructure issues that you're talking about. It's not really a fair contest when you're measuring Brand South Africa versus Egypt, Nigeria, or the others.
Well, not necessarily so. You know, by the way, quality of life is also one of those indicators that goes into it. You know, the Soccer World Cup did provide us with a platform, and we're grateful for that. It also tested our ability to manage ourselves within a very tight timeline and be able to deliver on what is, according to FIFA, you know, a formidable Soccer World Cup. But we don't want to overestimate that. What it did for us was it brought us into the global arena in terms of, don't look at us as just being the South Africa post-94 and, you know, we're the nice people and how did you guys do it? There is more to us than that. We do have innovation. We do have, you know, infrastructure that compares to the best in the world. Our telecommunications, as was demonstrated with our local government elections last week, and our systems due to, you know, we've paid, you know, a lot of attention. So the competition isn't exactly unfair because we hosted the 2010 Soccer World Cup. But what it did was it gave us the platform.
Now this happens also on the back of South Africa, or Brand SA and the IMC effectively launching a very aggressive tourism plan focusing on launch pads in Kenya, DRC, Nigeria and Angola. Talk to us about this new tourism strategy and what it is that you're trying to do by way of synergizing how people see South Africa in the rest of the continent.
We don't want to take away from South African tourism, who does a formidable job as well, supported by the Department of Tourism, of course. The work they do around working their market segmentation and focusing in particular markets. As Brand South Africa, we support the initiatives, as in this case, of tourism. The National Tourism Strategy, which, by the way, I was part of the group that developed the strategy, identifies Africa as being an area where we need to have a presence. We need to go in and grab those markets because, you know, if you look at the growth of tourism internationally, the first thing they do is turn their people into domestic tourists. Then they look at the region. And, you know, Europe's a very fine example of that. They support each other. They visit each other's destinations. We have failed to draw those numbers from Africa, and particularly the SADC region, as we ought to have.
I'll tell you why I raised this question. You talked about the need to sharpen pencils. And when we look at this tourism strategy, some of the limitations have to do with Africans' perceptions of South Africa, the perception that we think we're the big brother of Africa, the natural economic hegemon, some sort of a superiority complex that the country has, and then obviously xenophobia that we've seen, and the fact that many Africans need visas to come to South Africa, barriers of entry into this market. So those are issues of perceptions that we have to address if Brand Africa is to work.
And hence, and really staying with our mandate as Brand Africa, we believe that if you look at the pillars that support a brand, one of the key issues is that of the culture of the people and also the way one's people behaves in a particular, you know, they always walk the brand, as it were. We cannot seek, as South Africa, to be embraced by Africa if all those issues that you mention are issues that we harbor and demonstrate. And when you talk about sharpening the pencil, we've got to be bold enough to accept that these are challenges that we have to address, and they have to be addressed constructively. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to achieve that objective. And as Brand South Africa, our drive and initiative with Brand Africa is to be able to use branding as a basis to drive that behavior. But having said that, Loretta, we mustn't be too hard on ourselves. When we talk about the movement of people and the need for visas, you know, it is not unique of South Africa. And, you know, it's something which over time, yes, we need to address and be able to relax those if we want the influx. But on the other hand, you know, we have to do it in a managed fashion.